All right, hey guys, it's Monday night and we're back for podcast number 3, Matt and Jake's podcast. Soon enough, I'm sure we'll come up with a better name, but for now, that's what it's going to be. Yeah, so this week we're just going to recap on what we went over last week. So big key points are taking action, doing what you say you're going to do, creating goals.
So I think those are the basic points, and then really it was just, again, taking action on things that you don't necessarily want to do was, I think, a big part of it too. Mm-hmm. And so I know one thing that I did, and I know that we were talking about this, but writing down 3 things you don't want to do and then doing those things each day. So it could be as simple as, for me it was calling people off of our business client list, so people that are already getting right to leads and like servicing by our business department. And so calling them, introducing myself and telling them about what I do on the insurance side of the business and letting them know we have an insurance side. That was one of them. Another one was calling other agency owners who own captive agencies and have been in business as an owner for over 10 years and learning about what they're doing, inviting them out to lunch, which most people wouldn't invite their competitors out to lunch. But I read a chapter in the Grant Cardone 10X rule that said competition is for sissies. That's what it was called. And the idea behind it was, don't try and be like your competitors or just compete with your competitors, but dominate your industry. And he said you do that by doing the things other people won't do. And I figured, what would you not do in my industry? Call people that you're competing against and invite them out to lunch to ask them how they're doing it. So that's what
Absolutely.
I did. That's what I did.
Yeah, you're only wasting time if you're trying to reinvent the wheel by doing things that other people aren't going to do.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess I haven't been implementing a lot of new things, but there's been some challenges that have come up. One big challenge was, I think I talked about it last week, going from 6 different things to then dropping down to 2 things. And those 2 things were doing decks and windows, and then we have another side of the company, which is Foundation King. My dad, who owns that with me, has been kind of pushing for me to step away from White Sand and get more into Foundation King. And I've really been pushing back about that. I guess it's out of pride. And soon enough, I realized that my pride is holding me back. I tried it, and the good jobs that were coming in they weren't comparing. So, kind of closing out the decks and windows and getting into the foundation and house lifting and just that new kind of untapped market that we're getting into. So that was kind of a hard change for me because it wasn't something that I necessarily am comfortable in. It's not something that I've done before, and it's not, it's just stepping away from something that I am very comfortable in is tough. So I guess for me, that was my taking action, was deciding that, we are going to, I've said no to multiple people now for doing jobs that I would have before said yes, just so I can open up this time and start tapping into this new market. So I guess that will be one that we'll continue to recap over the next few weeks.
Well, that's impressive anyway as it is, but I think it kind of just reflects, like, as a business owner and as young entrepreneurs starting a business, kind of like what we talked about, like just a couple minutes ago, about not doing what your competitors are doing, but doing what they're not doing. Mm-hmm. And if people aren't doing foundations the way you guys are doing them, and then that's an untapped market,
right?
And that's how you get into it. I mean, if you think about so my favorite examples in that book, they talk about, Grant talks about, if Apple, just wanted to be like Dell and IBM in Microsoft, Apple would be nowhere. They would phase out.
Right.
I mean, at the time, people weren't even calling PCs. They were calling them IBMs.
Right.
And then Apple comes along, destroys it, dominates the market, takes ownership, and now everyone wants to be like Apple.
Right.
Even if you hate Apple, you hate them because everyone has it.
Right. You know what? Like I heard, so I was listening to Simon Sinek, and he was talking about that, and he talks about it a few times in his story, but he went to a Microsoft to speak at Microsoft, and ended up they gave him a new Zoom, when Zune was a thing, and afterwards he says he likes to start the pod. So he was sitting down with the executive for Apple, and they were taking a limo ride somewhere, I think, to another convention, and he started telling him about this new Zune, and he's like, this new Zune is Zune, and how great it was, and the interface on it and everything. And he said, it's so much better than your guys' new iPod Touch. And the Apple executive said, I have no doubt. And just from that, I mean, you start picking up on Apple compared to Microsoft, because Microsoft always is trying to catch up to Apple, like you were saying. And Apple is only competing with themselves. They're just continually, upping their own, and that's why they've pushed to where they're at. And they don't do that by following the rules, doing the same thing everybody's doing. In that book, Made in America by Sam Walton, he talks about it all the time. That I would always be the one to break the rules, and he would praise people in his business for breaking the rules. Just because obviously there's a limit to that, but because it showed they were actually going to make a change in the company, and positive changes come from breaking the rules. So I thought that I think that's super, super interesting traits of people that are super successful.
Yeah, so basically we took action. The other thing, since taking action, so here, I'll just recap something I heard today on a Brad Lee podcast. It was pretty simple. It just said, use the acronym CPA, and it was that, know that you are either the cause, permitting, or allowing everything that happens in your life. And what he says is, it's better to assume responsibility for things we have no control over than to assume we have no responsibility for something we had control over. And so that was like one of those things where it's like, I've heard it a million times, but when it was put that way, it seemed even more simple.
Right.
And it just kind of made me, like, a couple times today, something happened, and I was about to be like, okay, well, that's not my fault. Or, someone was telling me their problem, and normally I would have been like, oh, that's a bummer that's happened to you. And I was like, well, you should have done this. Like, for example, even getting here for this podcast, normally I'd have been like, man, sorry I was late. This was crazy or something. But realistically, I misjudged the time, and I also took a wrong turn at some point. So,
right. And I wasn't here on time because I stayed too late at the dinner I was at, and instead of giving myself enough time to load up the artboard, which I already knew I was getting at the beginning. So I hate excuses, and it took me a long time to realize that I was hating them from other people, yet I was giving them often. And now it's like today I get to work, and I'm already at Home Depot, I'm already there early, I'm getting all the stuff so I can be there pretty close to on time. And my worker texts me and he goes, hey, I'm going to be like 5 minutes late because of traffic. I'm like, well, whatever, I'm not going to be there in time anyway, but that's not anything that he has to concern himself with. He's supposed to be there on time. So I get there and I just asked him a simple question. Why were you late? And he said, well, traffic was bad. I said, well, that's not why you were late. Why were you late? And the point I was trying to make was he was late because he didn't prepare himself. It would have been as simple as, and I know most people don't do this, but if you start taking responsibility for everything, what he should have done is get online and look at the maps. The maps tell you, they give you red lines, and they tell you how bad traffic is. And he should have got on there and looked at how bad traffic is to be able to give himself that time to make it on time or early. And then he told me he'd be 5 minutes late, and then he showed up 10 minutes late. And so that was another thing. I was like, okay, well, if you're going to be late or if you're going to have an issue, tell him. Don't make an excuse why. Hey, here's the problem. I didn't give myself enough time. I'm going to probably be about 15 minutes late. And then if you show up 5 minutes late, you look like, oh, okay, well, that's no problem. Or if you show up 10 minutes late, hey, that's no big deal. You showed up sooner than you were going to. Not, hey, I'm going to be 5 minutes late and showing up 10, and then you look like you're even less prepared. So, yeah, that was...
I think part of that plays into integrity, which I know some of you wanted to bring up. And,
yeah.
You've been reading a book that talks about integrity, and so I'll let you kind of take it for a minute.
Yeah, so it's called Uncommon. It's by Tony Dungy. If you haven't read any of his books, I would highly recommend them. He's the Indianapolis Colts coach. He's coached the Buccaneers. He's coached in multiple teams of football. Very godly man. Great advice and very just valuable information. And one thing he was talking that was just instilled into his life was being able to always have integrity and always do what you say you're going to do. Simple things like showing up when you say you're going to show up, either early or at least on time. If you say you're going to help a buddy move, don't tell them that day, like, hey, sorry, man, something else came up.
Well, especially if you had ever moved and you thought people were going to help you move and day of and you have nobody, think of how terrible that is. So
yeah,
don't be the person that causes that.
Yeah, that's but there's so many things, even simple things. If you tell someone that you're going to get them a insurance quote on time. Yeah. Well, what does that look like if you tell them you're going to get it to them on Wednesday and then you get it to them on Thursday? Right. It just automatically you're putting yourself in a position where you're already taking that away. And so it's always better to, give yourself a cushion. Give yourself time. Don't always feel like you have to rush into it. If you're giving someone a quote or you're giving someone a bid, if you don't think you can get it done on Monday, don't say you're going to get it done on Monday. Say you're going to get it done on Wednesday.
And if you already said you're going to get it done on Monday and you realize you can't do it on Monday, reach out to the person you're supposed to be getting it to and tell them, this is what came up. I should have planned better. It's not going to be done at this time.
Right. And that's one thing that I've even...
I had to learn that recently. Yeah. And I already knew that. And then I had a situation where it came up where it was something that was outside my control. I was already good at this inside my control, but then realizing something was outside my control. And I made a date promise of something I didn't have control over, which was stupid to begin with.
Right. And sometimes that happens, but that's another thing that brings you back to taking responsibility. So always take responsibility for your actions and always take responsibility for the things that happen around you. Because if you start taking responsibility for the things that happen around you, you'll realize that you have a lot more control than you originally thought. Mm-hmm. For years, I went by thinking, I had no control over that. That didn't matter. And as time goes by and I start realizing, just make everything your fault. And if it becomes your fault, then you can start learning ways to fix it. And you'll know what to do next time, and you'll know the advice to give and things like that. So, but there's another thing that you'd kind of mentioned about, giving someone that time. If you're not going to be able to be there Monday, tell them. Don't be nervous and don't just not contact them. And I had a job that was supposed to start on a Friday. And I had to contact the guy and tell him, hey, we're not going to be able to be there on Friday. I got to be at this other job finishing it. But here's the deal. Because I'm at this other job finishing it, this is just me telling you that when it's time to be on your job, I'm going to be on your job until it's done. I'm not going to be off doing other things. I'm not going to put you off. I'm not going to tell you hey, sorry about that. That's not something that I can take care of. It's just, hey, this lasted too long, but I'm going to get this taken care of, and then you get all my attention next. And even though they're kind of frustrated a little bit that they're not getting me right when they want, at least they have the satisfaction of knowing that he's going to be here on the job, getting it done, making sure it's done right. And I feel like that's actually helped me a lot over the last few weeks, just my relationship with my customers. So, yeah.
I think that about wraps it up. So, again, if you guys have any questions, leave a comment, subscribe, like. But the other thing would be give us feedback. We're so new at this. This is only episode 3. Right. We took a big break in between 1 and 2, and I think we're kind of came back a little bit more centralized and more focused. We're going to try and kick a podcast a week. Mm-hmm. Coming in, we promised we'd be here on Monday this week, a week from last week, and didn't really think about the logistics of it, but we're here on Monday. We're getting it done. One podcast a week, and hopefully try and help people out and provide enough value that you guys will share this with your friends, but also give us feedback so we know where we're giving you value and where we're not. And
if there's something that you guys do want to hear and you do tell us, if we don't know about it, that's just helping us learn new things. Because if you're telling us, hey, this is something we want to learn about, Well, if we don't know about it, that's just hurting us. So we're going to go out and study that. We'll figure it out, and then we'll come back to you and hopefully inform you on some good information that you guys are wanting to hear. So please like, subscribe, give us feedback, and we'll see you next week. Have a good evening.